Good people don't exist. Only controlled impulses do. That sentence alone is enough to unsettle most minds, because it contradicts one of the first lies society teaches us: that human beings are naturally kind, fair, and morally clean, and that darkness is an exception, a flaw, or a corruption. From childhood, we are trained to believe that goodness is the default state, and that cruelty, selfishness, manipulation, or aggression belong only to bad people. This belief feels comforting. It creates order. It makes the world feel predictable. And that is exactly why it is taught. Society does not deny the dark side of human nature because it is false. It denies it because acknowledging it would make people harder to control. If people truly understood that every human being carries destructive impulses, including themselves, they would be less naive, less obedient, and far more cautious about who they trust. Systems of order depend on predictability. Predictability depends on moral simplification. So we are given clean categories: good people and bad people, right intentions and wrong intentions, heroes and villains. What we are not given is realism. The danger of believing people are purely good is not philosophical. It is practical. When you believe people are inherently benevolent, you stop scanning for motives. You stop noticing patterns. You assume intentions match words. You interpret politeness as character, friendliness as loyalty, and moral language as moral behavior. In doing so, you blind yourself, not to evil, but to reality. Darkness does not announce itself loudly. It hides behind smiles, rationalizations, and good intentions. It wears the mask of virtue because virtue is trusted. And the people most vulnerable to manipulation are not the weak, they are the morally idealistic. Naivete is more dangerous than malice because it walks unarmed into environments that reward awareness. This is why denial creates blind spots. What you refuse to acknowledge does not disappear. It simply operates without your consent. When you deny the darker aspects of human nature, greed, envy, dominance-seeking, deception, you don't eliminate them. You just remove your ability to see them clearly, and unseen forces are always more dangerous than visible ones. This is not a cynical worldview. It is a realistic one. Psychological realism begins the moment you stop asking, "Is this person good?" and start asking, "What incentives are shaping their behavior?" Because human behavior is rarely driven by moral identity. It is driven by emotion, fear, desire, status, and survival. Morality often comes later, as a story people tell themselves about actions already taken. This is why naive people are easier to exploit than openly aggressive ones. Aggressive people are visible, their intentions are obvious. You can prepare for them. You can set boundaries. You can avoid them. Naive people, on the other hand, assume safety where none exists. They interpret warning signs as misunderstandings. They explain away patterns as exceptions. They give repeated access because they believe harm requires malicious intent, when in reality, harm often comes from indifference, self-interest, or emotional impulse. Malice is rare. Self-interest is constant, and this is the core illusion that must be broken. Human beings are not divided into good and bad. They are divided into aware and unaware. The unaware believe their impulses don't exist. The aware know they do, and therefore can control them. This is why morality is not innocence. It is restraint. It is not the absence of darkness, but the management of it. People who believe they are purely good are often the most dangerous under pressure. When stress rises, suppressed impulses surface suddenly and without warning. Anger leaks out sideways. Passive aggression replaces honesty. Moral superiority becomes justification for cruelty. This is why history is filled with people who believed they were righteous while committing harm. Denial does not prevent darkness, it concentrates it. This is where your identity activation begins. You are stepping out of moral fantasy and into psychological realism, not to become cruel, not to justify harm, but to see clearly, because clarity is protection. Awareness is leverage, and realism is the foundation of any real power, personal, emotional, or social. Once you accept that everyone has a dark side, you stop being shocked by human behavior. You stop personalizing betrayal. You stop confusing charm with character. You stop being surprised when pressure reveals things words never did. And most importantly, you stop projecting goodness onto people who have not earned your trust through consistent behavior. This does not make you paranoid. It makes you prepared. It allows you to move through the world without illusions, without moral blindness, and without the vulnerability that comes from believing humans are something they have never been. You become observant instead of judgmental, grounded instead of idealistic, calm instead of shocked. Before we go deeper into why good is often just untested impulse, tap like and hit subscribe, because what comes next exposes the difference between innocence and discipline, and why awareness is what keeps darkness from controlling you. This is the foundation of dark psychology, not manipulation, but recognition. Recognition that light and dark coexist in every human being. Recognition that denial empowers the shadow. Recognition that seeing clearly is not immoral. It is necessary. And this is the law you carry forward. What you deny in human nature controls you from the shadows. Once you stop denying it, it no longer controls you. Carl Jung called it the shadow, the part of the psyche that contains everything you refuse to see about yourself. Not because it is evil, but because it is inconvenient. Aggression, envy, resentment, dominance, the desire to control, to punish, to win. These traits do not disappear when they are denied. They are simply pushed out of conscious awareness. And what leaves awareness does not lose power. It gains it. Suppressed traits don't vanish. They leak. This is the central misunderstanding of human psychology. People believe that rejecting their darker impulses makes them moral. In reality, rejection only removes choice. When a trait is unconscious, it expresses itself indirectly through tone, sarcasm, passive aggression, moral posturing, or sudden emotional explosions that feel out of character. But they are not out of character. They are unintegrated. This is why nice people often confuse others. Niceness, when it is compulsive, is not kindness. It is avoidance. It is the avoidance of conflict, the avoidance of guilt, the avoidance of one's own anger. A person who must always be nice is not choosing goodness. They are suppressing hostility. And suppressed hostility does not remain silent. It finds sideways exits. Passive aggression is one of those exits. Instead of direct expression, the emotion is displaced. Help becomes conditional. Kindness becomes resentful. Politeness carries an edge. Words say one thing, while tone says another. This is the shadow speaking, not loudly, but persistently. And because it is denied, it cannot be regulated. Moral superiority is another leak. When people refuse to acknowledge their own capacity for selfishness, they often project it outward. They become hyper-attuned to the flaws of others. Judgment replaces understanding. Condemnation replaces self-examination. The shadow does not disappear. It relocates. What cannot be owned internally is hunted externally. This is why people who deny darkness are the most unpredictable under pressure. They genuinely believe they are incapable of harm, and that belief becomes dangerous the moment stress, fear, or power enters the equation. When circumstances strip away social restraint, the shadow erupts without warning, not gradually, not consciously, but explosively, because it has never been faced. Awareness would have softened it. Denial sharpened it. Jung warned that the shadow grows stronger the longer it is ignored, not because darkness wants control, but because consciousness refuses responsibility. The psyche demands balance. When one side is denied, the other compensates. This is not philosophy. It is psychological mechanics. People who integrate their shadow are not cruel. They are stable. They know what they are capable of, and therefore do not need to act it out unconsciously. They feel anger without becoming violent. They recognize envy without sabotaging others. They sense dominance without abusing it. Awareness creates distance. Distance creates choice. This is the difference between acknowledgement and indulgence. Acknowledgement says, "This exists in me." Indulgence says, "I act on it without restraint." Denial does neither. It says, "This isn't me," while allowing the behavior to surface anyway, uncontrolled, distorted, and rationalized after the fact. This is why shadow denial makes people manipulable. When you don't know your own dark impulses, others can activate them for you. Guilt hooks work because unacknowledged aggression wants release. Flattery works because suppressed insecurity wants validation. Moral pressure works because denied selfishness seeks permission. The less you know your shadow, the easier it is for others to pull its strings. Integration closes those strings. And integration does not mean acting out darkness. It means seeing it clearly, naming it accurately, and holding it within conscious control. The integrated person is not more dangerous. They are less reactive, less explosive, less predictable under manipulation. This is where the affirmation matters. You are allowed to acknowledge impulses without obeying them. You are allowed to see envy without becoming bitter. You are allowed to feel anger without weaponizing it. Acknowledgement is not permission. It is my responsibility. The shadow loses power the moment it is brought into awareness, not because it is destroyed, but because it is no longer autonomous. Consciousness absorbs it. Choice returns. Stability forms. This is the paradox most people never grasp. Those who claim to be purely good are often the least controlled. Those who admit their darkness are often the most disciplined. Because discipline requires awareness, and awareness requires honesty. This is the psychological law you carry forward. Suppressed darkness does not vanish. It mutates. When you stop pretending you don't have a shadow, it stops running your behavior from behind the scenes. Aggression, envy, dominance, selfishness. These traits are treated as moral defects in modern culture. They are framed as flaws to be erased, impulses to be eliminated, stains on an otherwise good human nature. But this framing is historically new, psychologically naive, and biologically false. These traits did not appear by accident, and they did not survive thousands of years of evolution because they were mistakes. They exist because they worked. Dark traits are not moral failures. They are survival intelligence. Aggression evolved because hesitation gets you killed. In ancestral environments, the ability to respond forcefully to threat meant survival. Envy evolved because comparison signals scarcity. It alerts the organism to imbalance, motivating action to regain resources or status. Dominance evolved because hierarchy reduces chaos. Groups without clear dominance structures fracture under pressure. Even selfishness evolved because organisms that completely neglected self-interest did not reproduce. These traits are not bugs in the system. They are the system. The problem was never their existence. The problem is unconsciousness. Darkness becomes destructive only when it operates without awareness. When aggression is unconscious, it erupts as violence or cruelty. When envy is unconscious, it becomes sabotage or resentment. When dominance is unconscious, it becomes tyranny. When selfishness is unconscious, it becomes exploitation. But when these same traits are conscious, they transform into discipline, ambition, leadership, and self-preservation. This is the difference between awareness and indulgence. Awareness says, I feel this impulse, and I choose how it is expressed. Indulgence says, I act this impulse out without restraint. Denial does neither. Denial allows the impulse to act itself out indirectly, chaotically, and often destructively, while the person maintains a self-image of innocence. This is why denial is the most dangerous position of all. It removes responsibility while preserving power. Predators sense repression instantly. This is not metaphorical. Human nervous systems are exquisitely sensitive to incongruence. When someone suppresses aggression, their body still carries tension. Their posture stiffens. Their speech tightens. Their reactions leak through microbehaviors. Predatory individuals, emotional, social, or physical, scan for this tension. Repression signals inner conflict. Inner conflict signals vulnerability. A person who has integrated their dark traits does not leak tension. They are calm not because they are harmless, but because they are contained. Their aggression is not suppressed, it is regulated. Their dominance is not denied, it is controlled. This containment communicates strength far more clearly than performative confidence ever could. Predators avoid these individuals not because they are loud, but because they are solid. This is why attempts to eliminate darkness backfire. When society teaches people to be endlessly agreeable, emotionally open, and morally sanitized, it creates individuals who are internally divided. One part of them feels impulses they were taught to reject. Another part of them tries to maintain an image of goodness. This split produces anxiety, passivity, and unpredictable behavior under stress. In moments of pressure, the suppressed traits surge back, often explosively. If this is shifting how you see morality, repression, and real self-control, tap like and hit subscribe. Your support matters because it helps this message reach people who are ready to stop living in moral fantasy and start integrating their full range with restraint. And integration does not mean becoming aggressive, dominant, or selfish in behavior. It means recognizing those capacities internally and choosing when or if they are expressed. It means understanding that you could harm, dominate, or exploit, and therefore, you don't need to. The power is in the choice, not the act. This is why integrated individuals are harder to manipulate. Manipulation relies on unconscious impulses. Guilt works on people who deny selfishness. Intimidation works on people who deny aggression. Flattery works on people who deny ambition. When you are aware of these traits within yourself, external attempts to activate them fail. The hook finds no tension to grab. This is the identity transition you are making. You are moving from denial to integration, from moral fantasy to psychological realism, from repression to conscious control. You stop trying to be good in the childish sense of the word. Instead, you aim to be aware. You recognize your full range, light and dark, and you hold it under discipline. This produces a paradoxical result. You become calmer, not harsher, more stable, not more dangerous, more ethical, not less. Because ethics without awareness is fragile. Awareness creates restraint. Restraint creates trust. The strongest individuals in history were not innocent. They were integrated. They understood their capacity for violence, manipulation, and dominance, and therefore were not ruled by it. They did not need to act it out unconsciously. They governed it internally. This is the law you carry forward. Darkness is not the enemy. Unconsciousness is. Once you stop fearing your darker traits, they stop controlling you. Once you stop denying them, they stop leaking. And once you integrate them, they become tools of stability instead of sources of chaos. That is not corruption. That is mastery. Repression and control are often confused, but they are opposites. Repression is force applied inward. It is tension without resolution. It requires constant effort, constant self-monitoring, constant denial. Control, on the other hand, is integration. It is awareness paired with restraint. And this distinction explains why people who repress their dark side are often reactive, while those who integrate it are calm. Integrated people are not calmer because they feel less. They are calmer because nothing inside them is fighting for recognition. When darkness is denied, it builds pressure. That pressure seeks release. Under stress, insult, fear, or power, it bursts out uncontrollably. This is why repressed individuals overreact. A small trigger releases years of denied impulse. Their response is never proportional because it isn't about the present moment. It's about accumulated tension. Integration dissolves that tension. When you acknowledge your capacity for anger, dominance, selfishness, and manipulation, those traits no longer need to announce themselves through behavior. They are already seen, already named, already contained. Awareness removes urgency, and urgency is what fuels reactivity. This is why integrated people appear emotionally steady under pressure. They are not scrambling to protect a fragile self-image of goodness. They are not shocked by their own thoughts or impulses. Nothing surprises them internally. As a result, external chaos has very little leverage. Calmness emerges not as an act, but as a side effect of inner alignment. This alignment also removes manipulability. Manipulation works by activating unconscious impulses. Guilt hooks people who deny selfishness. Fear hooks people who deny aggression. Flattery hooks people who deny ambition. When these traits are unconscious, they can be pulled from the outside like strings. But once they are consciously integrated, those strings are cut. You feel the impulse, and you don't obey it. This creates a profound psychological advantage. Others can no longer rush you, shame you, intimidate you, or seduce you into reactions that don't serve you. Emotional bait stops working. Pressure dissolves. Attempts at control feel obvious instead of compelling. This is not resistance. It is immunity. Inner balance produces external authority because authority is not a social performance. It is a nervous system signal. Integrated people do not leak tension. They do not over-explain. They do not escalate emotionally. Their presence communicates something simple and powerful. This person is not at war with themselves, and people trust what is internally coherent. This is why respect follows wholeness, not virtue. Virtue without integration is brittle. It collapses under pressure. Wholeness, however, is stable. It contains contradictions without splitting. It allows someone to be kind without being weak, firm without being cruel, restrained without being passive. This balance is rare, and rarity creates authority. People may admire virtue, they defer to wholeness. This is the dark psychology of internal alignment. When light and dark are reconciled internally, behavior becomes consistent. Consistency creates predictability. Predictability creates safety, And safety, paradoxically, creates power. Others relax around you because they sense you are not suppressing anything that might erupt unexpectedly. At the same time, they respect you because they sense you are not harmless. You are contained. This containment changes how people treat you. They speak more carefully. They test less. They negotiate differently. They hesitate before pushing. Not because you intimidate them, but because they cannot emotionally access you. There is no exaggerated politeness, no moral posturing, no reactive edge, just a grounded presence. This is what integration looks like in real life. You do not advertise your darkness. You do not act it out. You do not deny it. You carry it consciously. And carrying it consciously frees you from being controlled by it unconsciously. This is the transformation most people avoid because it requires honesty. It requires admitting uncomfortable truths about human nature and about yourself. But on the other side of that honesty is stability. And on the other side of stability is power that does not need to prove itself. This is the law that now governs you. Integration creates stability. Stability creates power. When nothing inside you is fragmented, nothing outside you can easily move you. That is not dominance through force. That is dominance through alignment. And alignment, once achieved, does not break. There is a final distinction that separates mastery from corruption, and most people never learn it. Darkness is not the same thing as destructiveness. Darkness is capacity. Destructiveness is lack of control. Every human being carries the capacity to harm, dominate, deceive, or exploit. That capacity alone does not make someone dangerous. What makes someone dangerous is unconsciousness. When a person does not know what they are capable of, they are ruled by impulse. When a person knows exactly what they are capable of, they gain restraint. This is why the strongest people are not innocent. They are aware. Innocence is fragile. It collapses under pressure. Awareness is resilient. It adapts. It holds tension without breaking. Moral strength does not come from believing you would never do such a thing. It comes from knowing you could and choosing not to. Self-knowledge produces moral strength because it restores choice. When you understand your darker impulses, you stop being shocked by them. Shock is what causes people to overreact, overcorrect, or justify harmful behavior after the fact. Awareness removes surprise, and without surprise, impulse loses momentum. This is the core of mastery. You are no longer fighting yourself. You are no longer pretending. You are no longer split. Light and dark coexist within you, acknowledged, named, and governed. Let's recap the truths you now carry. Everyone has a dark side. Denial makes it dangerous. Suppressed darkness leaks through passive aggression and moral superiority. Dark traits evolved as survival intelligence, not moral defects. Unconsciousness is the real enemy, not darkness itself. Integration creates stability, and stability creates power. These are not ideas to repeat. They are principles to live. This integration changes how you move through the world. Integrated individuals move with the economy. No wasted gestures, no frantic motion. The body is relaxed because nothing is being held down internally. When they walk, there is no rush. When they stop, there is no tension. Their presence communicates containment without stiffness. Integrated individuals speak with precision. They do not overshare. They do not posture. They do not moralize. Their words are measured because their identity does not depend on being seen as good, right, or virtuous. Speech becomes functional rather than performative. Integrated individuals decide without drama. Decisions are not emotional reactions. They are conclusions reached after observation. When they say yes, it is deliberate. When they say no, it is final. There is no internal debate spilling outward, because the internal debate has already been resolved. This is what walking with restraint looks like. Restraint is not suppression. It is a command. Suppression creates tension. Command creates clarity. You are not restraining yourself because you fear your impulses. You are restraining yourself because you understand them. And understanding breeds respect. From yourself first, and then from others. This is why integrated people are hard to manipulate. There is no guilt hook, because selfishness is acknowledged. There is no fear hook, because aggression is understood. There is no flattery hook, because ambition is owned. When external pressure meets internal clarity, it dissolves. You do not need to appear virtuous. You do not need to signal morality. You do not need to convince anyone of your goodness. Your behavior is consistent. Your boundaries are quiet. Your presence is grounded. And grounded people do not need to explain themselves. This is the dark psychology protocol lock-in. You are not here to become cruel. You are not here to exploit. You are not here to dominate recklessly. You are here to see clearly, to know your full range, to govern yourself before others try to govern you, to walk through the world without illusion, without denial, and without fear of your own depth. If this protocol revealed that darkness isn't the enemy, unconsciousness is, tap like and hit subscribe, and comment this below. I choose awareness over denial, because once your shadow is seen, it stops your behavior, and stability becomes your power.